forum for executives. I would like for Cameron Law and Savita to introduce themselves.
Good. Sure, I'll go first. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to be here. My name's Cameron Law. I'm the Executive Director at the Carlson Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship at Sacramento State. I'm born and raised in the Sacramento region and kind of been engaging in the startup and entrepreneurial ecosystem for the past 5 to 6 years now. I started out working in the venture capital space. So I worked for Impact Venture Capital and kind of got to work hands-on with entrepreneurs and exploring their technology solutions and helping them find capital and growing those solutions. After working there, I joined a nonprofit called Social Venture Partners. So I led that organization as the executive director and worked with nonprofits in our region, really focused on education. And so now I'm at the Carlson Center and really working with students and people in the community to help them advance their startups and entrepreneurial ideas, and really excited to be here and have partnered with SacHacks on this wonderful event that you all engaged in over the weekend.
Great. My name is Savita Faruqui. I'm a founder of a local company named Simsoft Solutions. We work mostly in the digital experience space, using all the latest and greatest technologies in that, including artificial intelligence, personalization, how to improve the customer journey and the user experience of solutions. Especially our, the client base is large enterprises, public sector, as well as highly regulated industries, utilities, and fintech, etc. So one of the things, like, I'm not native Sacramento. I grew up in India, but for last 20 years, I'm in Sacramento, and we have a good partnership with Sac State. Many students from Sac State become our employees, and we really have fun working with them. As far as my background, the data and the transparency, that is one of the areas that I'm really, really passionate about. In fact, I was invited to the White House Obama administration as champion of change in that particular area. I'm right now working with IEEE on their blockchain governance area. I'm also a member of the Sacramento ACM chapter. So I think that should be enough.
Well, thank you, Savita and Cameron, for introducing yourself. I am a SacHacks Operations Associate and a student physics major. So I would like to thank you for coming and on this forum, and I will be asking you a series of questions, if that's okay.
Sounds great.
Excellent. All right. How do you envision the future of technology in Sacramento?
I'll go first on this one, and Savita, you'll take the next one. We'll get it dialed in as we go here going forward. But yeah, when I look at the Sacramento region and where the technology sphere is going, I think that I look at it from kind of an industry lens. And so one of the industries that I definitely see coming about is the mobility space. There's been investment in that space through the California Mobility Center, which has been a public-private partnership that's come together to really advance technologies around mobility, not just in terms of the actual hardware, but really looking at autonomous vehicles and clean energy solutions to that mobility space. And so I think that there's infrastructure that's really being built around that component of our ecosystem. I also believe the agricultural industry, as it pertains to technology, is one that will be definitely growing. I think, I know later on we'll be talking about digital inclusion, but one of the components to really advance the agricultural industry as it pertains to technology is really getting bandwidth out to those communities, because you can't necessarily be running a drone technology if you don't have the infrastructure to support the uploads and download speeds, and that really creates a systems impact when you start to look through those lenses. But I think those are the two major industries that I see us growing. One area I'm particularly passionate about is really the civic and GovTech space. I think there's a lot of opportunity. As someone born and raised in the Sacramento region, one of the things you continually hear is the government mentality, and we have government around us. And it's like, well, let's use that as an asset as it pertains to technology and really flipping that script. So I think really looking at how we can create efficiencies around government and then also really plugging in our citizens to our democracy and our government processes. And that's more of the civic tech side. And, I really enjoyed looking at a lot of the solutions here today that you all presented and worked on over the weekend. A lot of them were in that civic space, really looking at trying to solve homelessness and engaging in different spaces. And so I think that that's a huge role for technology going forward, and one that the Sacramento region should definitely grab a hold of. And so those are kind of the main three. I think you also would see a lot of technology in the med tech space. So, but I'll kind of stop there and see what Savita has to say.
Yeah, so what I'm seeing more and more is that the creativity and technology coming together is happening in Sacramento. Of course, like Sacramento is a government town, the large footprint is there, but even in government, I'm seeing that creativity coming in, and that is exciting for me. So the digital engagement, civic engagement, it is no more dry civic engagement, right? Like it is. So about 15 years back when I started Simsoft, at that time I used to use this phrase that bringing glamour to government, and no one liked it. So I think that bringing creativity and technology together is exciting for me. Another thing I'm seeing again, the meetups, if you look at it, every week there is a meetup on Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, and blockchain space. So I see that is another interesting area, again, looking at it personally from my experience. So I just am excited about where Sacramento is right now and where we are going.
I'm going to have to use that glamour for government. That's a good one. I'll borrow that and definitely quote you on it. But I think that will be a good pitch to further that conversation.
Wow, well, thank you. And moving on to how can students help support and be engaged in this community?
So I think one of the key things for students from early on, if they get engaged in the community, again, the forums we have to, as a community, we have to make them available. And right now, SacHacks, Startup Sac, and there are many such kind of forums, even Sacramento ACM chapter, both the students chapter is there in CSU and so on. I think the students, if they get engaged early into what is going on and not only engage as in participate, but really hands-on, that way they can find their passion. There is so much out there in the technology space that just knowing what is that going to keep me motivated for long, you just do it.
I love that. I couldn't agree more. I think when I think of getting involved, I think partly it comes from a place of action, right? And recognizing your value as a student. So I know a lot of times if I place myself back when I was a student, you're like questioning, what you can offer and what you can bring. And I think the biggest thing is just seeing all of your presentations as the perspective you have of the world is key for all of us, right? And so not hesitating that perspective is needed as we craft solutions for the future and your unique skill sets of being able to build things. And so I think, not being afraid to do that. And if you ever need a voice or a champion, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'd be happy to plug you into those conversations. Savita had mentioned a number of meetups and ways to connect. ACM's great. I know Harsh, running some of that as well with you. One thing that comes to mind is Code for Sacramento, which is all about civic tech. That's a great way to plug in. And I know they always need capacity. A lot of my work is more on kind of the business creation, entrepreneurial component of the technologies. And what I find is a lot of business-minded people looking for technology people to help them with those solutions. And so, getting engaged in some of those communities. Savita had mentioned Startup Sac, which we partner with a ton at the Carlson Center. We have weekly monthly discussions with entrepreneurs who tell their story. So would love for you to kind of just plug into that space and bring your technology mind to the table and really help advance our entrepreneurial ecosystem. And then one last kind of opportunity to plug in is every Wednesday there's 1 Million Cups, which is a presentation for two startups, and just having your perspective and giving feedback to these organizations is key. But I think finding your passion and finding a vehicle to plug in and not being afraid to do so, because we really need those voices and those perspectives.
So just to add on what Cameron just said, again, one of the key things, like hindsight is 2020, but I see that as a student, when we are in the technology space, we focus on technology alone, and that's not very useful. But how is that technology used to make someone's life better? I think the Carlson Center and Startup Sac, etc., applying the technology in real world. I think if you get engaged in such forums, that is, you will see the value. And again, the passion does not have to be necessarily in the technology, but a problem domain. Like, I want to address the homelessness problem. That could be one of the passions.
Exactly.
Indeed. Well, my next question would be, could you share some insights into plans for initiatives you're taking right now?
Yeah, so in terms of initiatives that we're running, so we're kind of just doing the blocking and tackling of a lot of our programs. One of them is our virtual entrepreneurship toolkit series, where we provide some of the frameworks for taking your concepts and business ideas forward. So a lot of the presentations I saw would love to be supportive of any of those and plugging into that and helping you kind of see the market viability with it. In terms of larger initiatives, we have just from the university lens, really pushing for the California Mobility Center, and that's definitely work that we're getting behind and seeing as part of the region. Another initiative that we're looking to build out is we play kind of the role of what we call an ecosystem builder, so bringing together different organizations that support the tech community and the startup ecosystem. And so bringing some of those convenings together is one of the major areas. And then I think the last major initiative that we continually push is Global Entrepreneurship Week, which is the third week of every November. So it's a ways off, but it definitely creeps up on us. But it's a great one to have conversations. And I think just forums like SacHacks could definitely plug into that week and really elevate the conversation and really bringing the practicality of those solutions, like Savita had mentioned, right, is really having that passion for a domain and applying the technology to help bring those solutions and impact to our communities.
Yeah, so again, there are two different areas that I'm continuing to work on, and SimSoft, my company, is. One is digital inclusion, civic tech engagement, kind of both from the perspective of improving the overall customer journey and customer experience. But how do you see, one of the important things for providing good user experience is that the performance has to be adequate. The system has to be secure. Your data needs to be maintained. The privacy of the data needs to be maintained, and so on. So there is, again, that creative space and the technology comes together really well. When you do want to provide personalized experiences, such as Amazon and Macy's and any websites today do, government is still somewhat behind in that particular area. Why not I go to one of the government websites and the system provides me what services might be relevant to me. So if I'm, again, the homelessness or any issues that I might have, if I haven't renewed my driver's license, any such things, there is a lot of data available. So bringing it all together. So it really, in my opinion, the data, the creativity, the technology all comes together in this space. So we continue to work there. Another one, as I mentioned, blockchain and digital cryptocurrency. That is another area that I'm very much interested in, and we are right now working with the IEEE on the governance of such systems, because that's a huge challenge. What laws should be there, what policies should be there to manage the cryptocurrency. So those are the two areas I would say we are working in. Again, engagement with Cameron and the local communities, that is something that will happen more than it is happening right now from Simsaf's perspective.
Awesome. Well, I would like to move forward into, what does tech in Sacramento mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, again, for me, I'm probably repeating the same thing, but creativity, technology, bringing together to improve the overall quality of life for Sacramentonians. That's what I see the impact of technology. Again, Sacramento a few years back and now it is growing tremendously. And Cameron, your work, the VC ventures and so on, I know that was the vision Jack had, the technology triangle.
Yep.
And I see that is happening. So,
right.
Well,
yeah, especially with all the people moving to Sacramento. So we're bringing in some of that triangle. So now it's leveling that playing field, most certainly. Yeah. So I mean, what tech means to me, I think it's similar to kind of what Savita shared. Partly for me is like kind of the word comes to me is like enabling these solutions, right? And so I think partly having that user-centered approach is key to understand truly what the issue and problem is. And one, not necessarily that there has to be profitability in the solution if it's a nonprofit type of solution, but is there a mechanism to sustain it going forward? And then the technology is the enablement to connect people or to make it feasible in providing a service or good. And so I think when we look at tech in the Sacramento region is really how do we continue to just foster these solutions as a community to our growing challenges. There's growing challenges from racial injustice to climate change to a variety of things, right? And so how do we continue to have that approach, but also not forget the human-centered component of it? Because I think that's a core focus of how we actually get the tech to make that impact. So that's kind of, I think, what technology looks to me.
Wow. Well, I love your answers to that. Moving forward into how can one be more involved in the tech scene in the community?
Yeah, great question. I again probably will recognize my bias is probably more on the entrepreneurial side of things. And so, again, I think just one, looking for startups that need support. There's a lot of growing needs and more ideas that are coming to fruition. So I think finding forums like a 1 Million Cups or a Startup SAC event or anything we might be hosting at the Carlson Center, as well as if you're a student at UC Davis, they have the UC Davis Student Startup Center. But really plugging into these forums and just kind of learning what support is needed, right? And I know as students, really building out your portfolio of what you're working on and being able to demonstrate your skills, it's a great way to build capacity for our community, especially for these startups. So I think just finding those forums and not being afraid to jump in, you'll learn more about you and yourself and your craft as you kind of start having those conversations. But I think just finding those unique forums that are your particular interest. And so if you're passionate about, solving climate change, there's Clean Start, which is a great resource to plug into. If you're interested in, the med tech space, there's a variety of resources through UC Davis and the Aggies and all that good stuff. And so not hesitating just to jump in and finding those community partners that can help you. And a great resource is the Startup SAC ecosystem map. There's a great map of all the different things you can plug into, from the university partners to the venture capital firms to the other ecosystem building organizations. So I think that's a great starting point to check out.
So I would emphasize internships. Both the public sector and private sector companies do offer internships, and that is a great way to get experience, understand the entire systems life cycle and so on as needed. And once you know how to deliver something, then utilizing that with, say, creating something that you can show and then build upon, that is a great way. But it's always a catch-22 situation. How do you get your first project? How do you build upon that? So in order to do that, again, be open to doing multiple internships, get exposed to multiple different areas, and that would help you. If you say do 2 or 3 internships, you could bring in ideas from those and create something unique.
Absolutely, I completely agree. Moving forward into how can students and others in SAC support the underserved population in Sacramento area during this time of COVID-19?
So again, the issues of homelessness, they kind of multiple times they become difficult during the COVID situation. As far as the tech community goes, though, I just feel that transparency and data, that is the area where tech community can help. The availability of homes and availability of sanitation, the services for homelessness. I'm not sure I can add too much to that, but data has power. So just exposing that and making use of it to elevate, focus on certain issues, I think that's what, in my opinion, tech community can do.
Allison, I apologize. My Wi-Fi fell off, so I don't know if wasn't able to see the question. So here we got it in the chat. How can students and others in SAC support the underserved population in the Sacramento area during the COVID time? Yeah, great question. I think there's many different facets, and one of the things I think of is people like to engage community at different levels. So I think one level is if you're passionate about kind of working with people one-on-one, is finding organizations that kind of serve the underserved populations in that fashion, right? So if there's ways to volunteer at Loaves and Fishes, or at a training support through the Greater Sacramento Urban League or something of that sort, that would be a way to plug in. If you like working at the organizational level, maybe providing capacity for nonprofits in the community that serve these underserved populations and help them build their infrastructure as it pertains to technology. And then at kind of the highest level would be supporting through like a Code for Sacramento on more of these systemic challenges, or plugging into the city of Sacramento and different municipalities to help advance conversations and provide your perspective as a student and someone who engages in our community. I think that a lot of times the voice of students and our younger populations aren't brought to the table as we pursue solutions. So I don't know if my Wi-Fi is not working very well. I'm on my personal hotspot, so I don't know if you heard any and all of that. So, but I appreciate it.
We did hear everything, Cameron.
Okay. Because you're both frozen on my screen, so I was like, oh gosh, I don't know if I'm talking to a blank screen or not.
Savita, Cameron?
Yep.
All right, moving forward into the next question. It's a question from the audience, actually. On the topic of digital currencies and blockchain, do you see Sacramento starting to embrace cryptocurrencies similar to what the city of Miami?
I would have Savita go first on that one. She's more knowledgeable in that space.
Yeah, so the city has not yet embraced it. And when I'm referring to activity in that area, it is more from private sector right now. So eventually, my hope is that the city of Sacramento eventually will come to that place where they will accept the cryptocurrency. But the state of California, they did establish a focused group on evaluating what blockchain technology could be used for. So there is effort going on at the state level. Of course, due to COVID, it is kind of on back burner right now, as far as I see. But definitely, the city of Miami is ahead in the game, and other cities, I'm sure, will learn from them.
I don't have a ton to add because I think Savita is much more knowledgeable in this space. I think it definitely is an interesting topic for the region to explore, and especially from the city lens. I think there's pros and cons to it, most certainly, but I think understanding the practicality of it and how some of that infrastructure would be built for our current processes. So I definitely see the application, and I'm glad to hear that there's a California kind of task force. I wonder if that's something that might be brought to the city council for a task force to explore blockchain technology as it pertains to city processes or accepting digital cryptocurrencies. So if someone's passionate about that subject, maybe they bring that up to the city council and see if they're willing to explore such topics.
For sure, absolutely. Moving forward into another question from the audience, how do you see the connection between government and Sacramento adopting more modern technologies moving forward with frameworks and web technologies?
Yeah, great question. Savita, I don't know if you mind if I take it first, but the first thought that comes to mind was Louis Stewart, who used to be the Chief Innovation Officer for the city of Sacramento, and just kind of the office that he helped to stand up, did a lot of great work in building what they call the Sacramento Urban Technology Lab. And this kind of infrastructure was really furthering that conversation between government and these technology industries. And so they built a framework, which was kind of what they call the triple helix. So it's where government, academia, and the private sector come together to really explore ways to advance these technologies. And so I think a core component of really growing this space was Verizon, designating Sacramento as a 5G city. That opened up a lot of doors, which really kind of led to the California Mobility Center and really seeing this place or this region being a test bed for autonomous vehicles, as there's kind of the broadband infrastructure and then some of the infrastructure from a institutional lens to be able to allow that technology to take place. I think that's kind of my main thing. The city is definitely, trying to further conversations around Aggie Square and, the med tech space. And so furthering to engage in a lot of those. And so I think those are kind of the two that come to mind. And I mentioned earlier on, I see ag as the space, but I don't know that the city's as plugged into that space. But they are maybe more so in the life science and sustainability components.
Yeah. What I see is, again, there is, like each one of us, there is your day job and there is focus on innovation, right? And you need to innovate while doing your day job. So that is always a challenge, and more so in government space. So the dedicated focus on innovation as such is difficult. So what I'm seeing, though, is that say state of California is using artificial intelligence, machine learning, specifically franchise tax board is using to identify fraud. I'm sure there are such discussions going on in EDD, Employment Development Department. So where like the needs are forcing us to use the modern technology. That's my view. Because you need to improve your business processes, because there are issues, you are using these modern technologies. Or on the other hand, the customers of government, which is the citizens and businesses, they are demanding improved experience. So that is another way the government is looking at it. But Cameron, like you said, I worked with Louis also for kind of many years. So I know his efforts, and those were really great efforts. So that innovation with the current issues and challenges, even the issues with the, the legacy systems that exist, all of that working together is what in itself is innovation to me. Not just using innovation technologies, but innovating the processes so that you are improving efficiency, delivering better services.
Wow, thank you for your insight on that. I would like to move forward into, as we know, it's very remote nowadays with COVID. And so the question from the audience in reference to this is, can we expect operations to continue being more towards remote technology focused down the line?
Do you want me to go? Yeah, sure. So it's a great question. I do think there will be kind of this remote work style. I do think there is a longing to get back to some in-person work. I think the way work will be structured will definitely be different, and why we build places and spaces for work to occur. I think one of the growing areas will be kind of in the co-working space, partly due to corporations and institutions having maybe more flex time where you can kind of be at a remote work and not have to come into a more formal office space. But having some of that structured place of where you go to work and share ideas, I think there will still be a longing for that. I know from just my own experience that, doing kind of proper brainstorming and some of that innovation work, it does require people being in a space together. The example I kind of always point to is when you think of how Steve Jobs designed the Apple campus, right? The intention to build that space was for people to have these random collisions to innovate new ideas, right? And I think that that's not as occurring as much in a virtual space. I think it's really difficult for that space to be created to have those random collisions where a marketing person runs into the technologist who comes up with a new idea to help the company or the institution grow. And so I think there will still be some of that component, but I think remote work or flex remote work is definitely here to stay to the most degree.
I concur completely, Cameron. Again, from my own experience, all of us are working from home, but it is tiring to some degrees. I think the boundaries between work and your home life, it is more blurred when you're working from home. So, but at the same time, I do see that there are some advantages, and there is also need for collaborative spaces where you can get together and work together, innovate, and sometimes if 10 people are around a table, the problem may get solved quickly, while you're discussing on meetings over Zoom or whatever you use, it's more difficult. So, so I concur with Cameron that some kind of remote work, flex work, I do see will still be there, but it won't be completely remote.
I completely agree. There's definitely something to having the in-person aspect and the digital aspect. Moving forward to another question from the audience. What are some core goals and objectives for the first phase of greater tech adoption in Sacramento? What are some potential future phases?
For tech adoption, the first thing that comes to my mind, and apologies, Savita, I couldn't. You're both frozen on my screen, so I can't really read you. So the first thing that comes to mind is kind of around the digital inclusion conversation, right? I think for us to really have tech adoption across the region is really to build that infrastructure. So while I was at Social Venture Partners, I helped to form the Sacramento Coalition for Digital Inclusion with the city and Valley Vision and some other stakeholders. And we really looked at digital inclusion through kind of a three-pronged lens: was skill acquisition, being able to access reliable internet connection, and then a device that allows you to fully utilize the capabilities of the internet. And so I think when we look at it through that lens, is some people might have the hardware and the technology, but they don't have the skill sets to be able to be fully functioning in a digital world. And so I think for us to really advance the technology conversation in the region is to really attack that foundational level. We're seeing, we can grow technology companies, but do we have the workforce to support the growth in these technology spaces? And so I think that relies on all components of that digital inclusion conversation. And so I think that's the biggest component. And then when you start to have more technology people, right, it's kind of that success to the successful in terms of systems dynamics of where you start to have more of that burgeoning tech ecosystem building on itself. But I think we have to really look at that foundation from the access that we're building to skills, as well as to reliable internet, and as well as access to the hardware to be able to be fully functioning.
Yeah. Again, I completely agree. One thing I would add is, starting the investment into our students early when it comes to technology. So I know that there is a lot of efforts at community college level, but even at the high school students level, long back, there also were visual tools I used to use for learning analytical thinking in the grade school and so on. So how do we engage students in technology from early on? I think if we focus on that, the skills part would be addressed. Sometimes because of fear, people keep away from technology. So if we can address the fear through education, through providing skills, I think everything probably will fall in place, or at least go in that direction.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Moving forward to another question from the audience. Can you touch on the importance of open data? Savita, Cameron?
Yeah. So the importance of open data, first of all, when things are open and accessible, that's when accountability happens. So there are two there is carrot and stick, both in the open data area. The stick part is that the transparency allows accountability. The carrot part of it is that when the data is open, many entrepreneurs I have seen use that data to build something unique and really create businesses out of it. So those are, I see, as the main two things in the open data. But there's also, I kind of distinguish between open data portals and transparency portals, where open data portals provide you the raw data that an entrepreneur could use and analyze it and create something unique, versus transparency portals focus on communicating to the information to your audience. Say in the civic tech, it could be for citizens and businesses, so they can make informed decisions. So raw data is still not accessible. So converting raw data to accessible data and thus achieving transparency, that is the whole spectrum I see. And at each level, there are different stakeholders and different uses for those. In fact, some of the transparency portals are used by the government themselves, the staff themselves, in order to do functions such as auditing, verifications, and opening up the data also helps them improve efficiency. So multiple things.
I don't have much to add. Savita's answer was really excellent. I think just building on the two components, I think really the openness of data would provide entrepreneurs to see problems that are existing from an effectiveness lens or from an efficiency lens, right? And so being able to utilize that, and entrepreneurship being all about creating solutions to existing challenges. And so I think that would give us more visibility into the issues that lie And then I totally appreciate the conversation around the transparency components of things, and that, upstream, as you're thinking of building processes, right? If you are more cognizant that data will be open, right? You build the systems to better ensure that the data is transparent and doing the right thing. So I don't have much else to add. I think her answer was terrific.
Well, thank you for your answer. That was absolutely insightful. I have another question from the audience. Any advice for aspiring student startup founders and entrepreneurs?
Sure. I think for me, the first thing that comes to mind is don't do it alone. That's typically my first response. One from as a sole founder is finding people to help you build your solution and your idea, but also really relying on a community. That's kind of what I've tried to build at the Carlson Center, is build some infrastructure to help students and entrepreneurs in our community really find that success in bringing their solutions to our community and to the marketplace. And so it's action is the key component, right? So just get going and finding people here to support you, and count on me as a partner to do so, because we need more solutions in our communities and entrepreneurs. I think when I look at it from a systemic lens, is entrepreneurs and new business creation is really what grows economies. Is new business creation is actually a net job creator and is the most effective way to really growing economies. And so the more people that start businesses and are successful in doing so, the more our economies will grow and providing opportunity for our region. So don't hesitate and start now, and look to us as a partner at the Carlson Center. We'd be happy to connect you to resources and others, individuals that can help you. So
yeah, I would say that whatever you decide to do, perseverance is really, really critical. So that's why, and you can achieve that only if you're doing it for yourself. It is because something really speaks to you. So don't ever do it for someone else. Do it because you want to. And then the third thing I would say, so perseverance and then doing it for yourself. And the third thing I would say that for your goals, be committed to those, but not be attached to those. Now, what is the difference between the two? Being committed to certain thing, that I want to reach certain place, and my car broke down, but I'm committed to it. I'm going to find another way to reach there. But if I'm attached to that particular goal that I want to reach there and my car broke down, I'm just going to be upset about the fact that this happened and not clearly think towards that goal. So it's very likely that you may start with an idea and then you may pivot to something else, but you can pivot successfully only if you have clear mind and you're not really just heartbroken because your original idea didn't pan through and so on. So those would be my three things.
I just want to add one thing. She made me think about, as you're kind of starting, recognizing what you will create will end up changing as it hits the market, right? So is the current solution you're thinking about, as you get feedback through what we'd call customer development, your solution and your idea will take the form of something different. And that's something good and natural, because that means people that you're actually finding and solving someone's problem. And so don't be afraid to get that feedback and continue to iterate, and that it's really about finding solutions to people's problems and really building those solutions for it.
Absolutely. And then moving forward into another question, any thoughts on the development of information technology education and apprenticeship programs in Sacramento?
Can you say that again one more time? I cut out a little bit. If Savita heard it, then go for it.
Any thoughts on the development of information technology education and apprenticeships programs in Sacramento?
So, like I said, my company hires from Sac State, but the technical workforce is a challenge in Sacramento. So that is a reality. As I suggested, I feel that we should start early, and kind of build the workforce that we need. And definitely the apprenticeship and early education in technology, in my opinion, is critical. I don't know how to make this happen though. What my company is trying to do is find out if we can provide certain education, some classes we can offer to um, high school students. Of course it would be on a voluntary basis, but that is the thought that we have from you know my company's perspective. We are in communication with some folks at Sac City and see if we can build some kind of partnership between community colleges, high schools, and city and us. But that is just very kind of preliminary stage right now.
Yeah, I think Savita hit a great point. I think of that whole journey, right? I think it starts with STEM education and K through 12 to really start to build interest in the STEM field that will lead more people into the IT education space. As it pertains to where to start for IT education and apprenticeship programs, there was one that was recently launched in response to COVID-19. The partners were the Greater Sacramento Economic Council, Greater Sacramento Urban League, and then I think the city was one of the sponsors. So I don't know the name of the program, but I would definitely recommend if you search that. It was in the Business Journal within the last few months, so you might check that out. And then I know there was one for cybersecurity. I can't remember the name of that program. But no, I think you bring up a great question, and one that is something we need solved in the ecosystem. I think apprenticeships is a great approach to it, but I think it's finding the right incentives and building the partnerships. So I think that's a great question. So.
Your answer to that. And the final question from the audience is, what makes you excited about technology?
Go ahead, Savita. Great. That was a tough question.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, for me, I cannot think anything without technology. So it's like, what makes me excited? Like I had said earlier, problem solving is something I really, really love. So using technology to solve a problem, it's kind of, you can see it happen. So that is what is exciting to me. So you can build something, like even in this hackathon, you guys created something. It is out there. You can experience it. So to me, technology, software especially, allows that instant gratification, so to speak. Let's say that if I were to build a house, it's not that easy. While here, a small thing I can create and build upon it. So that's what is exciting for me.
It's a great answer. I think what's exciting to me is I think in terms of the expansiveness of technology and how it creates a space for people to be creative when they look at problems, right? And so I think, as I said earlier, so I think technology is an enablement of key solutions to our society's challenges. And so I think really it allows us as humans to be able to think creatively and how we come up with solutions, and that technology is really that enablement of us getting to that place where we're actually solving problems. And so I think that's what's exciting to me. And I also see that creates new industries for us to explore as a region, and creating, at the end of the day, solutions that we use in our everyday life. And that's why my passion, one is I love the Sacramento region, but I also love working with people in the entrepreneurial and the tech space, because you're as a technologist and as an entrepreneur, you're building the physical and virtual worlds that we live in. And so that's why I want to support our entrepreneurs and our technologists, because they're building the communities and both virtual and in person that we all live in and engage with. So that's what's exciting, is what does that future look like when we're further connected in different ways and actually solving our society's issues.
Yeah, just adding from that expansive aspect of technology, that is also something that fascinates me, because you do something and then you can see the connections of that technology to something else, and you can traverse that, and it's a field in itself, and there is so much to learn, and really exciting applications of all of those technologies. So it's just web that you can travel and explore and continue doing so forever.
Absolutely. Do you have any final thoughts that you would like to share for our students in the SacHacks community? How can students continue to stay connected with both of you?
I would
Yeah,
say LinkedIn.
go ahead, Sivi.
LinkedIn would be the way you can connect with me. You can find me on LinkedIn. In terms of the suggestion, I said, it's very simple from me, which is just do it. Whatever it is, the action, that's what makes a difference. So that's it. Like Cameron had said it earlier, not to be afraid and engage. I think that is what I believe is the key thing, that engage, work on completing what you start, even if it is in small chunks, and just iterate.
I love that. I think, the key word for me is action and not being afraid to go out there and to build. We need not only your perspectives, but we need your expertise and skill sets to really grow our region, both from a technology standpoint, but also from an entrepreneurial and economic lens. So I think, plugging in and not being afraid to attend your first event, right? And I think when I think of action, there's a variety of different starting points. It could be the Carlson Center. It could be, you just being here is already a starting point. But I think plugging into different events, and you'll find where your kind of community and your niche lies. And so connecting to different events and programs is a great starting point. As for connecting with me, I would second LinkedIn is a great way. I'm pretty accessible through that, and I would be happy to share my email address. I'm always happy to have conversations, especially if you're interested in pursuing a startup or an entrepreneurial idea. Would love to meet with you and explore how I can further connect you in the community. And yeah, I think that's the best way, is either LinkedIn or through my email. And I can send that to Allison if she wants to share that to everyone else.
Yeah, and I would also say, if someone is interested in blockchain space, just let me know in the LinkedIn message, and we can continue the conversation.
Well, thank you, Cameron.
Sorry, Alison, can I add one last thing?
Of course. Thank you.
So, the action, it seems like there is nothing special in that. And that as a suggestion seems like, okay, I want something more. But at the end of it, that is what makes all the difference. So, it is as simple as that. That's what I just wanted to point out.
Yeah, I think with that, right, is when you take action and attend an event like this or your next one, right, is you meet a whole set of people, right? So, if you end up connecting with Savita and I on LinkedIn, you're now connected to all the information that we post and share and the opportunities that come with that, right? And so when you engage, you expand your community and your network. And I think there's only good things that can continue to come from that. And so don't hesitate to reach out to me. I shared my email with Allison, which I hope she can share with all of you. So don't hesitate to reach out to me. And, if you're saying, hey, I'm interested in this, where should I go? I'm happy to provide that advice, because we want you to plug into our community and, explore all that it has to offer.
Well, thank you both for speaking today. Very enlightening. Thank you, Cameron, Savita, for taking the time to talk today at SacHacks. Up next, we have our SacHacks closing ceremony at 6 p.m. See you all then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.